Hello and welcome to the Miss Rolling podcast. As usual, my name is Jacob Staten, and as usual, I'm joined by JJ Armstrong. JJ, how are you, mate?
An interesting time to be alive, Jacob. We sit here. Steve Cooper's just been sacked. Can't believe I'm saying those words, but it's officially happened. So at the moment, I'm feeling fairly deflated. How about you?
I would say I'm pretty much the same, mate. I'm pretty much the same. I'm no longer surprised. I'm just disappointed. Yeah, no, other than that, mate, I'm absolutely top of the shop. And I think it's best to start off on a bit of a brighter note. Some of you guys may have seen it. It's kind of been overshadowed, hasn't it, given the news today. But next Wednesday, which is the 27th, JJ is going to keep me honest. Is that right?
27th of December, that's correct.
At 8 p.m. GMT, I think we're on GMT now. We will be hosting an end-of-year Forest quiz. It's free to play. There will be prizes. We will be setting up a donations page for a charity that is yet to be decided on, but we'll reveal more details around that. But yeah, it's going to be fantastic, isn't it, JJ? JJ's going to give you all the tech speak on how to play, aren't you, JJ?
I am. It's going to be 27th of December at 8 o'clock, as Jacob said. That's GMT. It's going to be live on our YouTube channel. So head to our YouTube channel. This is where you're watching this video now. And if you're listening to this podcast, then type in Miss Rolling In Podcast on YouTube. You should be able to find us. The live stream already exists. It's ready to click and notify. So click the notify me button on the live stream. There will be a link in the description to this YouTube video that you're watching now to take you straight to that live stream. So you can click the bell that says notify me, but also get it in your calendars because it's going to be a bit of fun. I think we all need to de-stress a little bit after today's news. There might be a few Steve Cooper questions in there, so you might get PTSD, but try and put that behind you. But yeah, there will be prizes. So just to confirm, 27th of December, 8 o'clock, prizes to be won in our end-of-year quiz. And there's a mix of questions from pre-Clough, to Cloughy era, to 2000s era, to 2020s. There's a big range. There's a very big range. So please try and pop along, because it would be very embarrassing if no one showed up and we were doing a quiz to nobody. So please do turn up. But it should be fun. Should be a laugh.
Yes, and obviously, as JJ's quite rightly pointed out, Steve Cooper has now been sacked. We're very, very quickly going to cover off the Spurs game. We did do a match day vlog because we did go. I think ultimately for me, JJ, it was a peculiar game because we were actually having a pint just before half time when Richarlison scored, wasn't it? What minute was it? Yeah, so 47th minute, so 2 minutes into added time. And up until that point, I thought it was a pretty comfortable game. I'm by no means saying that we would deserve to be ahead or we were the better team, but I felt pretty comfortable. Having watched the goal back now, I think it was the ball in from Kulusevski is a real piece of quality. He's a real good player and a good brave header from Richarlison. I'm not necessarily certain that the defender, I think it was Willy Bolly, could have done any better. Again, Matt Turner probably does the right thing in trying to come out for it. But yeah, I think the second goal it kind of probably sums up where we are right now. I think. I mean, the bad clearance or pass out by Turner is one thing, but the way he's tried to save that shot, I don't care how hard Kulusevski's hit that. I can't help but think back to my youth and think that David Seaman would have just caught that and laughed at it. I think it's where goalkeepers are nowadays. But yeah, I think the most worrying thing for me wasn't necessarily the poor performance. It was just a lack of reaction to going two behind. We make a couple of substitutions immediately after the goal. And the pattern of the game didn't really change. And that was what bothered me the most as opposed to the actual overall gameplay, I think, JJ.
Yeah, I mean, we won't spend much more time on it. It has passed, but I think it comes back to the same thing that we keep banging on about, which is avoidable goals. That seems to surmise where Forest are right now, particularly the second. The atmosphere still felt quite promising. People still seem to be behind Cooper, but we did leave the game a few minutes early, and it felt frustrating once again. So I think everybody really knew that the writing was on the wall there. We all knew a change was incoming. We've been a bit in limbo since that game, so I'm surprised it's taken till Tuesday for the news to land. But it did sort of feel inevitable to me after that game. And I think that is harsh. I think they were by no means bad. I don't think it's really a performance that you could possibly sack a manager on. But when there's one win in 13, I guess you can't really argue, and those stats sort of write themselves. But here we are today with Steve Cooper being sacked.
I don't, when we left, I didn't really leave the game thinking that was the last time I was going to see Steve Cooper in our dugout, if I'm being honest. I'm not surprised that he has gone now, but I imagine, I don't imagine it had too much to do with that game, if I'm being honest.
No, I think the writing has been on the wall for a very long time, and if you read the Telegraph article that's been put up today by, I believe, John Percy, it speaks of a very fractured relationship between Marinakis and Cooper, and it leaves the impression to me that this sort of very fractured relationship has left Steve Cooper in the lurch for quite a while, and I think the writing's been on the wall for a long time. I think Marinakis has been waiting for the fan voice and fan support to quiet it down enough for it to have as minimal backlash as possible. But I do think that it's not a sacking based off just purely that performance of that game. I think it's a culmination of some poor results, and I think something that the owner has seemingly wanted to do for a while, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's well documented how the relationship between them fractured and all that kind of thing. I think there's very possibly too many middlemen between the owner and the manager. And there seems to be lots of we didn't seem to be pulling in one direction, which is absolutely what was happening when we went up, and to a certain degree the second half of the first season in the Premier League. But yeah, it's an absolute shame, but I don't think any of us are surprised, are we, JJ? At this point?
Not surprised. I think, you look at it on the surface and you think any manager that's only won one game in 13, is it even 14 now since the Spurs game? I'm not sure, but it's something, one win in 13 or 14. Any other football fan looking at a team near the bottom of the table whose manager hasn't won in that many games will look at that and think, this is your routine, manager getting sacked, time for someone new to come in and a change to be made. And they'll look at it and think, what's the big deal? But I think it extended far beyond that. And I think that's a reason a large portion of the fan base are quite upset at the news of Cooper being dismissed. I think what he did for us to end that exile, no other manager could do it before him. And we waited 23 years for that sort of pain to be relieved and finally be taken up in a really exciting fashion to the top flight. And not only that, we talk about how many signings that he had in last season. He did an unbelievable task to keep us up, which obviously the city of Nottingham felt very together. And people sort of use that as a bit of a stick to poke people that are Cooper in, of that we talk about him connecting the city and it's all right because he loves the city even though we're losing. But I do think there are elements of that. Obviously, results are important for a football club, no doubt, but the elements of it where he has connected the city are really important to this club, having a sense of community and feeling like we're pulling together in the same direction. And whilst recently it does feel like a portion of the fan base has sort of deviated off and gone to their Cooper out ways, I think largely the fan base was connected the most I've seen it in many, many years. In fact, the duration of my time supporting Forest. So I forget what the original point was because I've just waffled on, but I think it extends far beyond just on the surface of it being a club near the bottom of the table getting rid of their manager. There's a lot of caveats to it of what he meant to both the city, the fan base and the club. So I will forever be grateful for what he did, taking us up to the top flight after so long.
Yeah, same. I mean, I think for a very long time, I'll remain a Cooper in guy. I get it. I get, we are seemingly in a free fall, and whilst I don't agree with the decision, I don't own the football club, and I don't understand the ramifications of going down and that kind of thing. But I still think Steve Cooper would be the person to take us forward. I look back. You look back through history, and you look at Alex Ferguson's time at Man United. He didn't have a great start. Even Brian Clough didn't have a great start at Forest. And I'm not for 1 second suggesting that Steve Cooper could emulate probably two of the greatest managers this country's ever seen. But why couldn't he have done? It's I'm just I'm a bit bummed out, if I'm being honest. That's probably the way I would describe it. In that, well, I'm not shocked or surprised. I'm kind of glad that the whole saga's over. We don't have to think or talk about it anymore. But I just feel like he had a whole lot left to give the club and the city and the fans and the players and the whole lot. But as a Forest fan, the club gets my unwavering support. It's just the team that has to win it.
Yeah,
that being said, if it is Nuno coming in, he's got 100% backing until he hasn't.
Yeah, just to go back on the Steve Cooper element, like we sit here today, not even 2 years since he's taken us up to the Premier League, after keeping us up in the Premier League with an unprecedented task of having that many players thrust upon him, and we sit here today, but less than 2 years after that, where we're 5 points ahead, and yes, we're in free fall, and yes, those recent results are not good enough, but it's really difficult to see why we wouldn't stick by him personally. That's just how I feel. Doesn't matter now. All the people that are Cooper out, don't come for me. There's no point. It's happened. He's gone. But I just still felt like he had it in him to turn this around, and we were still in a good position given the fact that whilst a few teams below us might start picking up points, this rot will not last forever. And I think we were starting to find the solution by being a bit more resolute in the last two performances, showcased a team for me that could fight and gain a few more points before the end of the season. And I thought, whilst they're in a very good form at the minute, I think there was no better time to start that than Bournemouth at home this Saturday. So I can see why it's a precarious position and a difficult decision on whether to roll the dice for the owner. He's obviously invested a lot of money. I would suggest maybe he looks at where that money has been spent, because I don't think it's all... I don't think you can just say, I've invested this much and it's all been successful, because I don't think it has. And to be fair, some of that has landed on Cooper's doorstep. He was responsible for wanting to sign people like Chris Wood and Andre Ayew and all this stuff. So it's not been a success rate for him. So I can see why it's been a precarious position. Obviously, there's a fractured relationship, so it felt inevitable. But for me, I just personally felt like it was still his task to sort of keep us going. And I agree that I am I am relieved that this is finished, because the last few weeks, months on X, for example, hasn't been enjoyable, because the infighting, I know it's something as trivial as a social media thing, but the infighting amongst fans and the negativity on a certain few people, does weigh on you. And, you catch a few strays just because we're a podcast and we put our views online, which you're going to do that if you put your voice online. I understand that, but I just will be glad that it's done, to be honest. And that's not me being glad that Cooper's gone. It's just me glad that we can stop having this sort of toxic infighting amongst the fan base for now. I don't think it completely stops. I think it's maybe only going to get worse, but we can maybe at least breathe. And what you said at the end there is 100%. I will back the new manager, whoever it may be. It looks like Nuno, but at the moment, I can tell you how I feel, and that's uninspired, and I think that's an uninspired choice. But once he signs that contract and once he's confirmed as Forest manager, he will receive my backing 100%, because I do support Nottingham Forest, not Steve Cooper FC, as some people are led to believe. I want the manager that comes in, and I want the players that come in to be the best they can be for this club, and I want them to achieve great things, and I want them to be successful. And I don't for 1 second want them not to be successful just because their name's not Steve Cooper. So please don't get it twisted. That's not how I feel at all. I want them to be successful. And until they give me a reason not to be, then I'll back them 100%. And as soon as they step into place, it's going to be a very difficult task for any manager to supersede Steve Cooper. I think it's a difficult place to come into after somebody that's connected to the fan base that much has gone. So I think it's on us as a fan base to try and ease that as much as possible. I know we're going to be frustrated, deflated, upset, but I think we just have to give the new manager the benefit of the doubt. Because let's face it, it isn't their fault that Steve Cooper's been sacked. They didn't make the decision. They didn't have the one win in 13 games. They're not responsible for that. A clean slate. So whilst I'm deflated, the new manager will 100% have my back in, and I would encourage those that are maybe contemplating boycotting the new manager just because he's not Steve Cooper to rethink that, because we want to be successful as a football club. And this choice has seemingly been made to benefit us. Whether you think it is going to or not, it doesn't matter. We have to try and give it the best effort we can. And the best effort we can is by supporting the club and giving the manager the backing that we can give them, because we've seen when the fan voice is prominent and full, especially at home, that it can do some special things.
Absolutely.
Sorry, that was a very long talking.
No,
everyone's falling asleep.
It was lovely, mate. It was lovely. It takes us probably nicely into who we all expect to be announced, which is Nuno Espirito Santo. He was most recently at Al Ittihad, which is, I believe, is that the team? Oh, I'm trying to remember which place. Is this the team with
Benzema's in there?
Benzema, yeah.
Jota's in there, I believe.
Who was that?
Jota. He used to play for Celtic.
Oh, he's not registered, is he? Because they signed somebody else at the last minute, didn't they? Who is it?
Kante's in there.
Kante, Luis Felipe, Fabinho. Was he maybe the one?
Fabinho's in there.
They signed somebody, which meant that Jota couldn't be registered. I'm sure they did.
Who cares? I support Nottingham Forest FC, not Saudi Arabia, Jacob.
Well, it didn't go down well, did it? His style of management there, and he's been turfed out pretty quick. I mean, I'm not really going to judge anyone on their performance at Al Ittihad, whether it's good or bad. Tottenham, looking at his record, it's pretty 50-50. I think they were just expecting a bit more, weren't they? I think his record at Wolves, 47% win ratio over one game shy of 200. I think that's probably actually pretty good. I think it's worth remembering as well, while he was at Wolves, he didn't actually get sacked. It was just a mutual term and mutual parting of the ways type thing. I think he probably did get a lion's share of good Portuguese players, shall we say, which helped. Which hopefully we might get. I know we've had links with George Mendes before, haven't we? Which probably is probably why Nuno's coming in. Probably, I mean, he's definitely wouldn't be my first choice, but more I've kind of mulled it over. I'm less bothered about it, if that makes sense. He's not who I want, and it's not what I want to see. I know he plays a very similar kind of formation to Steve Cooper. It's not really particularly who I wanted, but I'm getting less bothered by it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you can certainly convince yourself of the positives of Nuno Espirito Santo, I think. And I think we're not going to see a vast departure of style that people are seemingly crying for. I know a lot of people criticise Cooper as, not having a style of play or being a bit more sort of defensive. I think we might see that for Nuno, but if he can get us being more effective, then fine with me. That's completely fine. Nothing we can do about it anyway, because it looks like he's coming in. Mm-hmm. I won't judge him on his time in Saudi Arabia. I think, it's a difficult time and place to be at the minute. I think they're very newly formed, and there's a quota of Saudi Arabian players I think they have to play who, for all intents and purposes, don't look to be the greatest from what I've seen in highlights. So I can't claim to know much about that league, so I'm not going to judge him for that. And just because he's got a few good Premier League players that are quite aged now does not mean that he should be sort of winning every single game. So who knows what happened there? I'm not going to try and question it.
I think with the Saudi Pro League thing, I think it's one of those, the reason I'm not choosing to judge him on any of that is because, what I mean, if Steven Gerrard did well out there, he's not all of a sudden going to come in as favourite for the Liverpool job, is he? Everyone's going to scoff at him and say that means nothing. So if you do badly out there or you don't do particularly well, then it also doesn't mean anything, does it? And I'm just looking at Al Ittihad's Wikipedia right now. Actually formed nearly 100 years ago, which is,
Yeah, who cares? Let's stop talking about Al Ittihad. We've spent too long talking about them. Obviously he had a very tempestuous, tumultuous time at Spurs. Some very poor stats that come along with that. But I think given the nature of the club that Spurs are, they don't always make it easy for themselves. And I think, when they've had some sort of war horses like Conte and Mourinho in sort of ripping the club apart, I think it's difficult for few managers to come in. And I think it's not always a success. Like Mourinho's obviously identified as a brilliant manager, but he failed to win anything with Spurs, as most people do. So I don't know if that's a true measurement I do think he did some good stuff with Wolves. I think the squad that he had was better than what we've currently got. I think he had a very stable, good spine and good group of players. You know, he had players like Patricio, Bolly, who was a lot younger, Neves, Moutinho, Jimenez, Jota, even Traore. Like he had some good players. Cody was there at the time as well.
Yep.
He had a good group of players and a good spine, and he did good things with them, and he got them 7-play finish and got them into Europe. So you can't deny that on paper that's promising. The concern for me is that if he comes into our club at this moment in time, the problem he's going to be faced with is the same group of players that I personally think have let Steve Cooper down.
Yep.
Once he reverted back to players that he knew would fight for him, we saw sort of an upturn in performance. I think, obviously, a new manager bounce might be a thing, and it might be enough to just keep us up. But I do worry that we're in danger of destabilising the club further by him coming in, having the same group of players, which in turn means he's unable to get results out of us. Obviously, we've got the January window, but bringing even more players in with a fresh manager, I don't know if that's a good idea, because we're already sort of trying to recover from the fact that we've had too many players brought into the club over recent years. I think it was 44 someone mentioned on Sky Sports earlier, which is mental. Taiwo is still injured, so that problem still persists. AFCON is coming up, so that problem still persists. So it is a worry for me, and I think I do feel a little bit bad for Nuno. I think he's got a big task to come into this club anyway, given the position we're in. But coming in after a manager that was so beloved by the fan base is a really difficult task to have.
Mm-hmm.
So I do feel bad for him. That's why I will give him my 100% support. But I can't personally see how anybody can sort of come in and make any real difference. I hope he does, obviously. Don't quote me on that, because I hope he does. And hopefully he is the change we need. But my concern here is that he comes in, same problems faced, can't get immediate results. And my concern being that maybe we have another new manager by the end of the season. I don't want to go back to the instability and unsustainability of changing manager all the time. I think he just needs to keep us up. Let's play it by ear, see how we go, see what his style of play is like, maybe give him at the start of next season. I am concerned that, you know, if we don't pick up results and we're still in a bit of a ropey position, if that trigger gets pulled, you know, we're starting this process again that we've been very familiar with over the last 23 years of manager after manager after manager. So that's the only thing that's really concerning me at the minute.
Yeah, that's my problem as well. It's just we seem to be back on the merry-go-round. I thought we were off it. I'm very interested to see his first 11, if I'm being honest. I think reading one of the articles today, and there's a lot of stuff like that flying around in a minute, but one of them was saying around there's certain players within the Forest squad who are frustrated at not being able to get a look in, like Nuno Tavares, Gonzalo Montiel, Andrew Omabamidele, Andre Santos. Players like that aren't really getting a chance. And Steve Cooper picks the team. He doesn't pick which players to sign, does he? Clearly, so there's that. But I'm really interested to see what that first 11 is going to look like. To see if any of those kind of players on the periphery are going to get a chance to come in and make a difference, because they could almost be like free signings, if that makes sense.
Yes, it will be very interesting to see his first 11. Interesting to see what formation he goes for, what style of play. Obviously, I don't think we can judge too much on this first game, because he's only going to have a few days to get in there. Yeah. But be very interesting. It will be interesting if some of the players that maybe feel frozen out, or some of the players that possibly were frozen out following the shambles of a Fulham performance, might grasp this opportunity and see it as a new start. And maybe that's where the uptake in form comes back. A lot of the John Percy article we spoke about earlier referenced the fact that Joe Worrell and Steve Cooper's relationship was pretty broken, and Worrell was pretty much frozen out. And I think that seems to be a thing that's going around Twitter at the minute, of people sort of calling for Joe Worrell. It'll be interesting. I think, a new manager coming in, I think one of the first things he'll probably do is get the club captain back in the mix. Unless, above him, the ownership decided that, whatever's happened between him and Cooper means he is going to Middlesbrough in January, as it's been expected. But, maybe it's a chance to get his Forest career revitalised. But it'll be interesting to see, the relationship with the fans following this, because it seems to have upset a few people of Worrell sort of kicking off about that. But I guess that's all playground stuff. And I think we can't really speculate too much until we see that first 11. But it will be very interesting to see. And it'll be very interesting to see if a few players that we feel have possibly let us down over recent weeks and not played for Cooper, it'll be very interesting to see how they react to this and if they're willing to fight a little bit more than what we've seen so far. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think the Joe Worrell thing, that they've clearly had a falling out, and I don't think anybody could say that Joe Worrell's performances have warranted another run in the first team, in my opinion. I'm not that bothered about him coming back in, if I'm being honest. I always say, I want every player that pulls on that red shirt to be the next Stuart Pearce, Nigel Clough, John Robertson, etc. I just don't see it happening with Joe Worrell. It might be best if we part our ways now, especially he's told he's not included in the Aston Villa matchday squad. That's a game that we beat one of the most informed teams in England 2-0 at home. That kind of thing. And then the Scott McKenna thing, I believe from what I read was he's not going to be given a new contract that he's been asking for. So therefore he's going to be sold so that he can't just leave on a free. And that's where it's all kind of stemmed from. But, Scott McKenna was player of the season the year we went up for a very good reason. But the issue is he didn't adapt to the Premier League very well at all. And then he suffered with, extremely long list of groin and collarbone injuries, hasn't he? So I understand exactly why we're not giving him a new contract. And if he's going to have a Marmar, he can train with on his own, so he's not being toxic to the rest of the players type thing. I completely get that. But
I think this points to the issue, however, that, say Worrell and McKenna do go in January, the only player left over from that promotion season is Ryan Yates in the first team squad. Which shows the vast amount of change that we've undergone very quickly, because it would, when was it? A year and a half ago? 2 years ago? It was, I don't know. I'm not very good at maths, but it was recent. And that amount of change for a whole new squad for only one player to be left is pretty crazy.
Season and a half, isn't it?
Yeah. So you can sort of see why it's a difficult task for any manager. Never mind Steve Cooper, but any manager to come in with that amount of change, particularly a new one. So he's got a difficult task on his hand, certainly. But Steve Cooper was afforded a lot of time. I'm just concerned. I've got no evidence to back it up, but I'm just concerned that unless results don't pick up really quickly, that, the merry-go-round happens. So fingers crossed. I would, if Worrell comes in again, and he's the best defender Forest have ever seen. We've seen him play against Chelsea. That performance was unbelievable. Carry that on. If he does that every week, happy. If McKenna somehow comes back next week and is the greatest player Forest have ever seen, I'm fine with that. If Nuno comes in and is the greatest manager Forest have ever had, it will help.
What a terrible shame.
It will help. I'm not sat here wanting anyone to be bad, particularly not a new manager. I'm just concerned that this may be, as I sit here now, uninspired choice, could destabilise the club further. But, like I say, caveat that with 100% back in once he signs on that dotted line.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, I think things like the Taiwo injury, they're not going to help Matt. Certainly not help Steve Cooper, in my opinion. I think if we play a certain way with that kind of striker, we certainly need some kind of backup, whether it's an alternate plan or just some level of like for like. But yeah, it's it is what it is now. There's a large portion of me that is just extremely glad that it's all over, JJ. I don't know about you.
Definitely, like I say, it's been a lot of infighting. We've caught a lot of strays recently. Like I say, I get it. We're a voice online, but we're not trying to be offensive or anything. We are just voicing our opinion. We've been called cultists and snowflakes and all that nonsense. We're not. We do support the club, believe it or not. And we respect your opinion. You don't respect ours. That's fine. But it doesn't matter. You know what? I'm just relieved that as it stands, it's done. And if in 3 weeks' time, Nuno's hit the ground running and, you know, sorry, I'm not allowed to swear anymore, am I, on this channel? If we're top 10, you say, in a few weeks, don't start pointing fingers and saying, oh, you Cooper in idiots, look at you now. Doesn't help anyone. You know, let's just wipe the slate clean. Equally, if we go down, I suppose we can't really point fingers at the Cooper out idiots and say, what, you know, there's no way of knowing. The best friend of any person in either side of that situation is hindsight, which, you know, as it stands right now, we don't have. It's a roll of the dice, and it's a very finely balanced roll of the dice. It could go either way at the moment, and nobody truly knows which way it's going to go. The only way we're going to know is with hindsight. So I guess maybe let's just put this toxic infighting behind us and try and get behind the new manager. That's all I can say. But let's say I don't think that's always as easy with a football fan base.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next game up, the first game up for Nuno is Bournemouth on Saturday. It's a 3:00 kickoff. Am I right, JJ?
I think it is.
3:00 kick. I'm going to double check. So
hold your horses. 3:00.
3:00 kickoff. So, you know, that'll be a nice standard game for him to get hit the ground running. Again, I'm just really looking forward to seeing his team sheet and seeing what happens in there. I suppose it's good he's got a few days in there as well with Nuno as well. If I've got my glass half full hat on, it's a manager that, if we did go down, has won the championship before and won it comfortably. It's a manager that has positive ties with a well-respected super agent. It's a manager that has done well long-term in the Premier League. So, you know, that's where I'm kind of trying to force myself to get and get in behind and that kind of thing. And, you know, again, he's not my first choice, but Steve Cooper wasn't my first choice either, JJ.
Wasn't mine either.
Do you remember who my first choice was?
I can't remember who. I remember who mine was, but I don't know who yours was.
I remember who yours was.
Go on, you tell me yours. Yeah, mine was Chris Wilder at the time.
Mine was Chesterfield United's Paul Cook.
Interesting. I mean, that says everything, really. Look, we're sat here today deflated because the guy that wasn't our first choice got the job and took us up to the Premier League when we were at the bottom of the Championship. Yeah. Do you know these things happen? We don't know anything, really. Mm-hmm. We're useless. What are we even doing this podcast for? We're idiots.
And if anyone's been listening to this for a long time, they'll know as well that we've had to swallow the humble pie on Ryan Yates as well, haven't we, JJ? Yeah. Who's gone from
maybe we need to.
We never wanted. What do you say?
Maybe we need to second guess why we're doing this, because we know nothing.
Well, I want to see you do the quiz next week, even though you already know the answers, and see how badly you do. That would be hilarious to me.
Well, I actually tested the quiz back, and I got a lot of them wrong, even though I knew the answers. So not great. Anyway, back to the Bournemouth game. You just said then that it's a standard game that you're looking forward to. I think it's a bloody horrible one to have. Bournemouth recently have picked up some unbelievable results. They have, yeah. They're only 5 points ahead of us. Let me just read out to you the last few games. Obviously, the Luton game got suspended, unfortunately, due to the Tom Lockyer incident, which is very sad to see. So best wishes to him. He won't be listening, but fine. They beat Man United 3-0. Great result, because that's at Old Trafford, something we failed to do. And you can talk about Man United being a bit of a weird team and all that, but they had just won both manager and player of the month. So they were doing something right. Tough place to be at Old Trafford, and they won 3-0.
How on earth they won that? I don't know.
Who knows? Who knows?
Sorry.
Bournemouth also beat Crystal Palace away. Difficult place to go. We couldn't do it. Yeah. They drew with Villa. We beat them. So you know what? But still, a draw against that Villa team is unbelievable. Beat Sheffield United 3-1. They beat Newcastle 2-0. They're picking up some very good results recently, and their form in recent weeks, they're on fire. I think it's a really difficult first game for a manager in this position for all the reasons we've outlined. I think it's a really difficult first game to go. Equally, at the same time, I do think that the Bournemouth team on paper, personally think, aren't incredible. They can be gotten at. They can definitely be gotten at. So who knows? It's going to be a very peculiar one, I think. But with the form they're in at the minute and with the sort of problems we're having and trying to embed a new manager, it's a really difficult one to predict or call.
Yeah, absolutely. You'd like to hope we're going to get the new manager bounce. That's what you've got to pray for, isn't it? I suppose. Yep. And that you apply some kind of quick fire tactics straight off the bat. I presume you're going to be watching JJ because I know I'm going to be watching, mate. I'm really looking forward to it. If you can't look forward to a home game against a team like Bournemouth, then I don't know what game you're supposed to look forward to in this league.
Yes, yes.
But then again, my glass is overflowing.
There's the obvious thing about last time out at home when we were 2-0 up and ended up losing 3-2. Definitely don't want a repeat of that. So try and avoid that if possible, please.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, then I think you're off to a good start.
Pretty please, yeah. We're going to try and get another one in, squeeze another one in before Christmas, aren't we, JJ?
We are.
Obviously, we've got Newcastle on Boxing Day, which is the early kickoff, in case you didn't know, because that seems fair to travel up to Newcastle for an early kickoff on Boxing Day. I saw someone online say that the official coaches are leaving at 7:15 in the morning. So if you go in,
fair play to everybody.
Don't have too much eggnog on Christmas Day because you will miss your coach.
Nothing but respect for anybody going to.
Nothing but respect for that. Absolutely. JJ, quiz. Talk to us about. Oh, fact. Before we do that, sorry, JJ, what's your guess for Saturday? Prediction.
Let's start this new era with a bit of positivity. Let's go. King Nuno 2-0.
King Nuno 2-0. I'm gonna match your positivity and I'm gonna go 3-1 new manager bounce.
Mine's based on absolutely nothing. It's hard to predict. You don't know who he's going to play, what formation he's going to play. It's going to be difficult. What the atmosphere is going to be like. But hey, let's just hope. Let's just hope.
Let's absolutely. JJ, talk to us about the quiz one more time.
So for those that have made it this far,
mate.
Jacob's just frozen, but whatever, I'll carry on. For those that have made it this far, congratulations. In the description of this video on YouTube, if you're watching, there'll be a link that takes you to the live stream. Click notify me, and that should give you a notification. That is for the quiz that is on the 27th of December at 8 o'clock. And you heard rightly earlier, there will be prizes to be won. If you're listening to this podcast on an audio-only platform, jump over to YouTube and type in Miss Rolling and Podcast. You'll find our channel. You'll find either this video, or if you click the live tab, you'll find the scheduled live video. Click notify me like I've just told you to do, and you'll get a notification when we go live. We'll remind you about it. We'll tweet you about it. We'll put it on Instagram, blah, blah, blah. So make sure you follow us. That's at Miss Rolling Pod on Twitter and at Miss Rolling In Pod on Instagram. The description will hold links for both of those to make your life even easier. So follow us and you'll be sure be reminded so that you don't forget. But please do join us. Like I said, it'll be very embarrassing if we do it to nobody. It will be fun. I promise it will be fun. You'll have a good time. There's prizes to be won, and it's not just the overall winner. There's prizes to be won for winners of each round. So even if you're out of it, you're still in it.
Am I with us, JJ? Am I here?
You're back. You're back in the room.
Sensational. That was absolute dynamite, mate. Well done. Absolute dynamite. As JJ said, there will be prizes. I think we're going to do this in some round format, isn't it? So there'll probably be a kind of a smaller prize for whoever wins each round, and a larger prize for whoever wins the overall competition. Play on your own, play with your friends, play with your family, play with non-Forest fans. Make their Christmas time and fill them in with Forest knowledge.
Fill them in. Just
fill them in. Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
It is Christmas.
Just a standard Christmas, that right? But yeah, I want to say, lastly, just a huge thank you to Steve Cooper. He'll never listen to this because why on earth would he? But yeah, you're the best Forest manager I've ever seen, and I never thought I'd say that about anyone other than Billy Davis. But yeah, can't thank you enough. You gave us the best football match I've ever been to in my life, which was Wembley, and yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, Steve Cooper. You will be sorely missed. He's not dead; he's just gone. But let's get behind the new manager. Let's back him. Let's see what happens in let's try and be positive that this is the right decision made.
Yep. Now, if you're listening for the first time, thank you for finding us. It means an awful lot. And if you've come back again and again and again and again, God knows we love you. You Reds.